Today, we're gonna do a little bit of heart surgery. And obviously it's a joke, but many UX gurus often say that doing UX design is a little bit like brain surgery, and obviously it's a lot of So let's operate on an open heart today in a design tool of your choice, and let's make something awesome together. Today, let's get creative, but I'm gonna make this tutorial in a slightly different way. It's going to be done in reverse. Just look at this illustration. You might think it's from some 3D pack that you just drag and drop a PNG and call it a day. But it's not. It's actually completely vector, and as you can see, all of the elements over here are completely editable. And in this video, I'm gonna deconstruct this and reconstruct it right next to it one more time. So if you want to be able to make nice looking shapes like that, follow along and you'll do great. I'm gonna be doing this in Sketch, but you can use any design tool, Figma, XD, Penpal, whatever you want. Let's begin. I'll start by zooming out a little bit. I'm gonna make the artboard a little bit bigger. And now I'm gonna expand the layer list. And let's start with the most bottom layer that we have here. So I'm just gonna paste it right next to it. And now let's look what's happening here. There are two fills, so let's turn off the top one and let's see what they all do. So the first fill is a linear gradient. The color on the top is this one, FF4E7D. And the color at the bottom is EC2838. So just a simple linear gradient, nothing fancy about this. It's standard opacity, nothing else. But then on top of that fill, we have another fill, and this fill has a gradient that starts a little bit above the shape, and that is a fully opaque color, so the opacity is 100, the full alpha, and this is this color right over here. And then it fades into a 50% opacity darker red. So that means that this lighter part over here is highlighted by the first color of the gradient, and then it gets progressively darker and it mixes with the gradient behind. So this is step one. If you don't know how to create the shape itself, simply create a rectangle. Start with that always. You can make it a little bit transparent just so you can see, and then round the corners to achieve this shape. Now, this bottom part here is also pretty simple. You can just create a triangle, just like this one, by using the pen tool. Then press enter, select just this corner over here, and also play around with the corner radius. Now, if you merge these two shapes, select both the path and the rectangle, and merge them, you'll end up with this shape. So this is exactly what we wanted to achieve. This is how you draw the shape. Then this is the two gradients. This is the very beginning of what's going on here. Let's look what the second layer does. So I'm just gonna go back here and paste that second layer in. Okay, and that second layer is a gradient again. This time it starts from a lighter color one more time. This is the color. And it goes down to a darker color near the bottom. But the main difference is that it also has an inner shadow. This inner shadow is black, but it's about 17% opacity. Y is -11, blur 19, but this is something to be tweaked. You just want something like a bubbly little effect like this. But the difference is that it doesn't fully cover the other layer like you see. It doesn't just go on top, but instead it's slightly moved down. Just a couple points. Okay, like that. And if you want to know how to stay relevant in the future full of AI design tools, check out my latest course, link in the description. Then let's look what the next layer is. And there are actually two. So let's paste in the very first one. And that very first one is a blurred line. Let's turn off the blur to see it. It's just a rectangle. It can also be a line. It's pretty narrow, pretty small, and it's placed right over this edge, and it's blurred. So like this. And as you can see, when I turn it off completely, when I remove the fill, it just makes this edge a little bit glowing, and this is what we want. Then the other element is a very similar one, but this time it's glowing white.
let's take a look at where it's at here exactly. And you can see they are all on top of each other and they are going right through this edge on the top. So this is what we want to do here as well. For both of them, just move them a little bit up. Okay, perfect. So we have this darker inner shadow at the bottom, and then there is a little bit of a highlight at the top. Let's go to the next layer. And the next layer is actually a combined shape. And this is where it gets tricky, because this combined shape is a smaller version of what we have. Let's turn off all of the effects here. Let's just focus on the shape itself. So I'm just gonna add a single color fill just to show you how the shape looks like. And before we start playing with the effects, let's figure out how to create that shape in a nice way. Because obviously if you take this shape and just shrink it, it's not really gonna work, right? Because, let me just quickly make this into a dark color. Because if you just shrink it, it's just gonna look messy like this. So what you want to do is shrink it a little bit and focus only on the triangular part at the bottom. What we want is this distance here to be the same as this one and roughly similar to this one. Now press enter and select just the two vertices on the top and then make the top distance the same as well. Then select the two on the side, make the side distance similar. For now, don't focus on here, just on here and here. So it's almost there. Then the same for these two. We need a roughly similar distance. And now we can select all of those and adjust the corner radius so it looks natural. So this is how you can create that shape. Okay, so let's go back to that shape. Let's place it in the middle. Perfect. And let's see what it does. So first of all, it starts with a gradient. It has a linear fill from EC2838 to FF4E7D. Just a standard gradient, but then on top of it, it has that darkening again. This time it's a solid color. It's 5C0F0F at 35% opacity. No blending modes, nothing. Now, on top of that, we are adding the borders, but as you can see, our borders are a gradient. So they are fully opaque here at the bottom, and then they fade to 0 opacity near the top. And they are about 3 points wide. But that's not all. We also have a shadow, and this shadow is white, or almost white. It's FFC8C8 at 50% opacity. It doesn't have any X or Y values, but it does have a 22 blur value. That makes it spread out really nicely from the bottom here. And there is also an inner shadow that gives you a little bit of that depth effect already here. That inner shadow is simply 1 on the Y-axis and 40 blur. The color is completely black at 17% opacity. You can try to bump up the opacity a little bit and see if you like it that way more, but I'm gonna go with 17. Okay, let's look at the next layer. Now, the next layer is quite interesting, because if you look closely here, you see that we have those little lines over here. There is one darker one in the middle and then 3 lighter ones on the side. So let's just grab all of them and paste them onto this new canvas. And let's bring them down. Now let's remove the blur. It was 6, so let's drop it down to 0 just for a second. And as you can see, this element is just a pretty light red color at 66% opacity. Then we add a blur of 6 at this size, and it creates this nice little blending effect. It also has a blending mode overlay, which is useful because then it blends with the background. And then this one is a darker red color at 100% opacity, and it has a blending mode of overlay as well. The blur is still 6. So if I remove the blur, you see this is a darker red overlay and it's blurred a little bit. So this is what it looks like right now. Obviously, it doesn't look similar to this yet, but with just a couple tweaks, we're gonna get there. So let's go back here and let's grab the next shape, because the next shape is what's gonna make this work. Just make sure that it's on top of the layer list, and that next shape is exactly where it's at, because this creates this indentation here. And that shape, let's start from the beginning, is a gradient. One more time. These are all very similar colors. There is a slightly lighter color in this case on the bottom and darker on the top because, well, if it's an indented shape, that obviously there's going to be some shadow coming from this top part. So this part is going to be darker. So this is just a gradient, no blending modes, nothing. It does have a shadow, and that shadow is very blurred. There's no X or Y, just 58 blur, and it's 42 opacity and 0 color, so basically purely black. And it does have an inner shadow as well to give it a little bit of depth, and it has 7 on y-axis and 76 blur. Then the color is 50% alpha and a slightly darker red. You can experiment with this a little bit by tweaking the color to find an effect that you like. Okay, next we have the layer that makes this entire thing possible. Because as you can see, we have most of the shape and it looks kind of similar, but not really. The colors are all off. So let's paste this element. And first let's look at how it looks like. So this is just a rectangle. It has 2 rounded corners at the top. The bottom ones don't really matter. And it has a gradient that starts at the top. It's a darker red, 100% opacity. And then it goes down to that same color at 0% opacity. And it's not to the very end, it goes a little bit like to the middle. Okay, and this element, as you can see, starts exactly in that indentation here. So let's move it there. Okay, it's starting to look exactly like we want it. So that's the whole thing. It doesn't have a shadow, it doesn't have an inner shadow, just the fill. So all of those properties here can actually be removed, they're not important. But this blending mode on this one is called multiply because we just want it to merge with all of the background colors. Okay, let's go next. This was the main element. Now we have a shadow under the heart. This is just an element like this. This is a rectangle, rounded corners, not too rounded, and pretty heavily blurred. So for 41, but if you go down to 0, you see how the element looks like. Fully opaque, just a sort of lighter red color. Let's go back to 41, and let's place this in the middle here. What it does, it creates this little highlight here behind that heart, and it makes that shadow a little bit more prominent. See how it looks like without this. So if I turn it off, it just gets pretty boring inside and dark. Okay, and that last element over here is something that if you follow my more visual tutorials, you probably noticed this before as well. And this is just an ellipse with a Gaussian blur. The color is something you can tweak. You might want to go with, well, sort of darker red. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be super light. Just kind of find something that works on your background. So I have a slightly light red. It's blurred. And if you remove the blur, it's just an ellipse. Because a shadow from something like this would be an ellipse. It could be bigger. It could be smaller. And also, if you move the element up and down, then you can animate the shadow going like this. So just a simple element, a blur, some reduced opacity to 60%. Let's actually reduce it a little bit as well, still. Okay, now let's look at the heart. And I made it a separate object on purpose. So let's start with the shadow of the heart. I'm gonna just copy it and drag it over here. And as you can see, this is the heart filled with a solid color, just the standard heart icon. Just like this, you can grab it from many free icon sets, or you can just simply create it yourself in any design tool. And it's blurred to 35. Then it has the multiply blending mode to just kind of, blend with the background. So then if you paste it over here, we have a nice space for the shadow of the heart to be cast. Now let's go to the next layer. And the next layer is the heart itself. So let's just paste it here, almost in the middle. And before I explain what happens with the heart itself, let's adjust the shadow because we want it a little bit lower so more of it is visible. Okay, perfect. So this is the heart, and as you can see, it has a couple of inner shadows and 2 fills. So let's turn off the inner shadows first, and let's turn off the top fill. So let's start with just the main fill. The main fill is the solid color 100% alpha, a light pink, let's say, FFA8B0. Then if we add another gradient on top of it, we can create this effect where it gets lighter, almost white at the top, and then goes down to the pink one. So it's basically a gradient from completely white at full opacity to that same pink color in the middle, right there. Okay, now let's see what the inner shadows do. Let's start from the bottom. So I'm gonna turn the white inner shadow on, and this is just white inner shadow, completely white, fully opaque, with Y value equals 1 and then a 33% blur. So it creates this little halo effect just inside the element. And it doesn't look as impressive with just that. So let's add the next inner shadow. And that next inner shadow has Y value equals -23 and a blur of 69. It's just a red color at about 60% opacity. And what it does, it creates this nice little effect of basically making the heart a little bit more natural, more red, or more vibrant near the bottom. If I change the Y value to 0, you see that it moves up a little bit. So this is not what we want. We want it -23 or more, just so it kind of moves more to the bottom. And then that last inner shadow has the blur of 23 and Y equal -10 because we just want it slightly shifted. And once again, let's see what happens if Y is 0. As you can see, it doesn't look as natural because it kind of creates this uniform looking inner shadow on all the sides. We want it just on the bottom here. And this is a fully opaque color, just this red over here. Okay, let's take a look at the next element. And there are actually 2 that I'm gonna copy and paste. So let's go back here. And let's just move them up. Okay, I think by now you probably know what they do. So let's turn off the one on the top and focus on the one on the bottom. This is a slightly darker color, so probably somewhere from the middle of the heart here, somewhere from here, fully opaque. And what it has is a 10 blur. So once you turn it off, it looks like this. It has the multiply blending mode here. If we turn it off to normal, then it would just look like this. But okay, let's go with multiply and then blur it to 10. And then the other one is basically the exact same thing with lowered opacity, smaller, because this is it here. And if I turn it up, you see that this element is just a smaller version. It's blurred less, so just 3 here, because if we blur it more for such a small element, it's going to disappear. And then it has a 22% opacity, also with multiply. And what it does, it creates this kind of little natural shadowing indentation on top of that heart. So just tweak it to be in the right spot. Okay, perfect. So those are the 2 elements over here. Now the next element is a highlight on the heart, which is pretty simple. It's just a fully white blurred to 12 oval. There is no blending mode, nothing. So if I turn the blur off, you see that it's just a circle, blurred, and it's placed right here. And then the other one is right there. You can tweak it, move it a little bit further apart. We don't want it anywhere here, obviously. So it's like a little bit off center, not exactly here, because it's not gonna look that natural. It has to be a little bit to the center of the heart, but almost in the center. Okay. And then there are 2 more elements here. Let's grab the first one, which is a small highlight on this side of the heart. It's one more time just blurred, fully opaque white color with 10% blur. So just an ellipse like that. And then here on the other side, we have another element, which is this sort of medium light red color, no blending modes, and looks like this. And it just blurred to about 18. And then it's placed here on the edge of the heart. The difference that it makes is that it makes it a little bit less uniform, and this is what we want. If that feels a little bit too visible, you can also decrease the opacity a little bit. And if you don't like this highlight, you can also just remove it. But that shadow here, I think, is more important because it creates this whole illusion of it's not completely uniformly lit. Okay, and just like that, with a couple simple steps, we created ourselves a nice looking heart icon. And obviously you can use these same techniques in any design tool to create pretty awesome illustrations for all your projects and make them completely custom, completely unique, completely yours. And yeah, that is awesome.
And that's it for today. Subscribe if you haven't, click the like button, let me know in the comments if you want more tutorials like this, and obviously have a beautiful day.